Is Rick Barnes losing his team? Caleb, I'll throw out a couple of reasons why. Number one, this team settled for 3-point shooting when Rick Barnes said after the game he tried to drill it into their heads that wouldn't win against Kentucky because he knew they would lag back. Tennessee didn't try to get it inside. Tennessee settled for 3-point shots. They took 45, which is the second most in program history. But I'll go back to the Auburn game as well. That could be viewed as a positive night in Tennessee's basketball resume come the end of the year when the NCAA tournament looks at it. It was a close loss against the number one team in the nation. But I think there's a problem there that you have an effort problem. I think that Tennessee has an effort problem through its three main guys, Dubar, Lanier, and Milicic. And I think they had an overall effort problem against Auburn when it came to setting screens and fighting through screens. I've got real concerns about this program, and I ask you, is Rick Barnes losing his basketball team? David on the message board said that I need a Jerry Green voice from Dave. Well, Jerry, what do you think? Well, could happen. I've seen it happen. All right, go ahead, Caleb. How concerned should Tennessee fans be about Rick Barnes losing this basketball team?
Well, first, I mean, I would push back on you in the idea that Darlington Dubar is one of their three main guys. I mean, he hasn't started a game this year, and I don't think he's played 20 minutes in a game this year. Yeah.
Well, he was supposed to be preseason. Sorry, I should have qualified that.
Right. And so he's dealing with a lot of issues. I can't go as far as Rick Barnes is losing his team. I can't even go the effort issue. Here's where I'm going, and this is really standing out with their primary scorers, Igor Milicic and Chaz Lanier. They have real trouble creating their own shot. And there is nobody on this team that can create their own shot. Now, given his play as a wing, Jemai Mashak should be able to, but Jemai Mashak is an offensive liability. And so it comes down to Chaz Lanier, who is looking more and more like just a spot-up shooter, or Igor Milicic, who's also looking more and more just like a spot-up shooter, even though he's a big. Igor Milicic understands nothing about leverage or positioning underneath the basket for a big man. I've never seen that before. And
whoa! You haven't? Have you seen any European players play?
They typically understand leverage and positioning. They do.
I would disagree with that. I think what you're doing is pulling out the best ones that we've seen over time. But as a whole, I think this is a common problem with European players.
Well, I haven't seen him be as bad as Igor Milicic. I mean, if you go to if you take the most classic European finesse big man, which would be Dirk Nowitzki, he understood positioning and how to get leverage underneath the basket. And he could get 8 rebounds a game.
No, I think that's where you're kind of fortifying my point. For every Dirk, for every Nikolai Jokic, there are 10 guys that didn't make it in the NBA because they didn't do what you did, which is which is understanding leverage. So I'm not surprised by that. I'm surprised that Dubar's absence wasn't something that Tennessee could remedy more easily. I'm surprised that they haven't adjusted. And I think that's more about players than Rick Barnes. And the question is, are these players giving up on the only way that Tennessee can win, which is a defensive style, which is dumping it down low, even if you know it's coming back out and you're going to have to shoot it. That's the style you have to rely on. It's not fun. Someone on the message board, let me give a shout out, that said it's all about shooting threes nowadays. Well, yeah, if you've got the guys, I mean, that's what Golden State does and has done for better part of a decade or more. But you've got to have the guys. And I think that Rick Barnes sent a clear message to his basketball team in the Auburn game when they throttled it down and played defense and tried to win with a slow game that this is the way we're going to play. And I don't think his players responded to that against Kentucky. That, to me, is problematic and troublesome.
Okay, but here's the issue. To play inside out like you're talking about, there's one key problem with that. Someone's got to be able to score inside. And who on this team? I mean, you bring it up. Darlington Dubar hasn't gotten to where he is, and I guess that's why you put more blame on him than a lot of people. because I think he meant for this offense to go through Darlington Neubert to a certain degree. But Igor Milicic just can't score inside. I mean, at the end of the day, Dave, Igor Milicic is nothing more than a 6'10" wing. He's not a power forward by any stretch. He can't play inside. I mean, it's becoming clear as day that he can't. Felix Opera on the other side is the tough guy inside, but that's all he is a tough guy. You're a Celtics fan. Felix Opera is nothing more than Kendrick Perkins was for the Celtics back in the day. You know, the clean up the glass, scrapper, get the rebounds, but you can't have him scoring inside. He's not useful at that. Cade Phillips is still developing. JP Estrella getting hurt, I think, changes this a lot. I'll tell you, yesterday's game, if JP Estrella's healthy, Dave, he'd have made a huge difference because they could go down low to him and play this game.
I'm not going to argue for a second, Caleb, that Tennessee would love to have a post score. Okay, I'm not going there. But at this point in the season, you know you don't have it, but you still have to be disciplined enough to dump it down low and keep defenses honest. And they didn't do that against Kentucky. Even if you know that it's just an exercise in futility when it comes to the scoreboard, you have to dump it down low and keep teams honest. And they didn't do any of that, which again makes me think that Rick Barnes is on the verge of losing his team. And with Florida coming down the pike, it could get worse before it gets better.
So you're saying doing it like a team that can't run, like how the Patriots back in the day couldn't run the ball, but they still did it just to keep defenses honest. They still committed to the run game.
Exactly. I mean, get a guard who's now maybe the Kentucky game is not a great example because you had some open threes that were missed.
That's where I was going to go.
Right. But Rick Barnes said it after the game. You have to continue to keep teams honest, just like Tennessee had to keep teams honest offensively in football by going to that 2 tight end and running the ball. I don't think it's going to lead to, I don't think we're going to say at the end of March that, wow, Tennessee's post presence led them to a Final Four berth. But I think we're very likely to say with Tennessee's lack of adjustment mid-season, they got bounced in one of the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament. Because I wrote about this on offthehooksports.com. They're quickly becoming a team that could slip into that 4, 5, or 6 seeded range. And I have no faith the way they've played on the road that they're going to go win a game against a 8, 9, 10, 11 type of team. This team needs, as much as anybody else, a 1 to 16 or a 2 to 15 or a 3 to 14. And I don't think they're going to get it. I don't think they're going to get that warm-up game where they're double-digit favorites. And even if they do, a la Kentucky, that were double-digit underdogs, I'm not sure they'll win the game.
Yeah, I mean, and you were right. Like we're underselling how bad of a loss that was last night. Dave, did I not tell you yesterday I thought Tennessee was going to win by 25?
Yeah, I thought they would win by double
Kentucky
digits. I thought it was a bounce-back game at home.
Kentucky had 2 of their starters hurt. I mean, this was a bad look to lose this game. I mean, we're kind of underselling how big of a deal it was that Tennessee lost this game, honestly. And so I kind of want to drive that point home to a certain degree. I'm with you. I think that Kentucky and Tennessee, that game last night revealed a lot of concerns. But Dave, I can't sit there and say the strategy was wrong because, like you just said, they had the open looks yesterday. They're just not hitting them. And I got to be honest, I think we're underselling the point. I think the reason Rick Barnes doesn't think his team can win by shooting threes regularly is because he didn't think Chaz Lanier is mentally tough. I'm sorry, Chaz Lanier and Igor Milicic are mentally weak. And I'm just going to – I mean, we said it yesterday, and they are very, very weak mentally as players.
On our message board, Steve's saying Dalton was a clutch shooter. This team is missing that. True. But Matt, I think, brings up a little bit more of a pressing point. How is the Chaz can't dribble, juke, and shoot? He can't find his own space. He absolutely cannot. And it's time to get used to that. It's time for this Tennessee basketball team and its players to say, that's where we are. We have to play more efficient basketball. And if they don't, I don't see this team making it to even the Sweet 16. I don't want to speak in hyperbole the day after a loss, Caleb, but this one is very disconcerting. Again, today's tough question is on the YouTube page, and it's pretty simple. And I'll give you the answers. Are you worried about Rick Barnes losing his team? Yes, slipping away No, he's too good of a coach. Pretty close voting. Tell you first about Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott. All right, we take a look at our poll question that is on the YouTube page. Are you worried about Rick Barnes losing his team? Yes, slipping away 39% of the vote. No, he's too good of a coach, 61% of the vote. Where do you stand, Caleb?
I say yes, slipping away, but not for the reason you do. I don't think the strategy is as bad as even Rick Barnes thinks it was. I think they just look, they should be good enough to Golden State you out of the building, Dave. This team should.
Oh,
Chaz Lanier and Igor Milchek should be good enough to Golden State you out of the building. Okay.
no.
And they're not. I said Chaz Lanier was a better 3-point shooter than Chris Lofton in January.
Well, you're wrong.
But he was shattering Chris Lofton's record. And he
Yeah.
was looking great. And then all of a sudden, the palms got sweaty. The moments got a little bigger. And Chaz Lanier got a little scareder.
Well, that's what differentiates Chris Lofton from the rest of the pack.
But how could I have known that at the start of January? I mean, we were debating Chaz Lanier and Dalton Connect at the time. I was making that debate thinking Chaz Lanier's 3-point shooting would continue. I didn't know he would go like this.
Well, I mean, in retrospect, I think you were a little ahead of yourself, maybe on your skis a little bit. I mean, that to me is the ultimate determining factor if you're an elite player or not. And right
how
now,
are we supposed to know that at the time?
Chaz Lanier is not an elite player, and you're not an elite prognosticator.
Oh, really? Okay. I can't
Well,
judge intangibles like that.
You couldn't have known that, but in retrospect, you have to say that, hey, this thing didn't shake out the way we thought it would.
I have no problem saying that in retrospect. You're right.
Now, before the season, if you would have told me that Chaz Lanier's not clutch, I would have said, okay, I don't know the intangibles. The thing that's still most stunning to me about his game is he can't put it on the floor, given his ability to shoot. He can't put it on the floor and get to the rack. That is just non-existent, Caleb.
No, you're right. That's what's shocking about it. I mean, he has Chris Lofton's weaknesses and not as good of strengths as Chris Lofton did, funny enough, with that in mind. I mean, again, guys, the red flag was there on Saturday at Auburn. Everybody was excited about almost beating Auburn when I'm like, guys, Auburn's best player was at 50%. But two, the red flag was you bring up the Neubert play at halftime. I bring up the play for Zakai Ziegler at the end of the game. Rick Barnes didn't even trust his best shooter to hit the game-winning shot at Auburn. I had no problem with going for the 3 at Auburn. I don't think you did either, Dave, right? When you're on the road against the number 1 team in the country, you want to go ahead and win that game.
I think the chances, if you go to overtime, are about 20% of winning that game. So, yeah, a lot of basketball aficionados hated that call that I've talked to, including former coaches in college. But I kind of look at it from a big picture. I'm with you on that. Chuck the 3 and get out of the building, because it's a good loss if you miss the 3. It could be a bad loss by 10 if you get into overtime with essentially playing 7 players. That would have been very troublesome to me.